Hello grade 8s and welcome to Functions 3. Today we're going to learn how to go backwards, something you've already learned about when you solved equations. Suppose you had a function and a rule and outputs, but you had no idea what the inputs were. How are we going to figure out what the inputs are? Some of you would be able to look at a rule like this rule here, 2x minus 2, and look at the outputs and just figure out what those inputs are. But that's not going to be easy for everyone. So today we're going to learn a mathematical way to work backwards and go from outputs through the rule to determine the inputs of a function. Our first method for doing this can be to use our knowledge of equations. Solving equations automatically works backwards. And if you remember, I taught you, now that we're in grade 8, about SAMDOB, which is the opposite of BODMAS. SAMDOB uses the opposite, so we add or subtract first, multiply or divide second, and then do order of operations with brackets and other things last. In this case, all we need to do is substitute because equations make SAMDOB work. It's important to note that we're going to need to do this process 3 times because we had 3 outputs that were listed in this particular problem. So we're going to have to do 3 different problems in order to get 3 different input values for x. One more time, f of x was equal to 6, minus 2 and minus 6. So for f of x, we're going to substitute 6. And we'll do another problem where it's minus 2. And another problem where it's minus 6. By doing that, we'll get 3 different inputs, which we will determine by solving equations. Pause the video and see if you can work out what all 3 inputs are. Okay, here we go. I'm going to solve all 3 at the same time. You, of course, would probably do each one by one. The first thing that we're going to do for each of the problems is we're going to move the numbers to one side to get the letters equal to the numbers. Each and every time, instead of subtracting 2, we're going to do the opposite. We are going to add 2. It's very, very important, as always, that we're very careful with integers, especially when we get to situations where we have negative numbers. So in the first part of the problem, we should get 8 equals 2x, 0 equals 2x, and minus 4 equals 2x. Don't worry about this 0. We're going to see how it works out now. The next step, of course, to get the x's by themselves is to divide by 2 everywhere. And whatever we do on one side of the equation, of course, we're going to do on the other side of the equation. And if we do that, we're going to get 4 is equal to x, 0 is equal to x, and negative 2 is equal to x. Be very careful with your signs. And in a situation like this one, use your calculator if you're feeling not so confident in order to determine that anything that is 0 divided by a number will be 0. The second method is common in primary school and in grade 8. I would recommend that you don't use it often unless you're very good with mental maths, but it just involves doing a backwards process. So we're going to work backwards using SAMDOB. The very beginning of our journey is going to be at the number 6, because that's where the journey ended. So we're working backwards from the 6. Then we're going to do opposites. So the first thing we're going to do with SAMDOB is we're going to work on adding or subtracting. And I'm going to do opposite operations. So whenever I subtracted in the original sum, I'm now going to add. And whenever I multiplied by something, I'm going to divide. So using SAMDOB and working backwards, we add or subtract first. So in this case, I'm going to do the opposite. Make sure it's the opposite. So we're going to add 2. Then we're going to stop and pause and write the result. So 6 plus 2 is equal to 8. And then we're going to do the next step, which we determined earlier is going to be division by 2. So we're going to divide by 2 instead of multiplying 2 because we're working backwards. So 8 divided by 2 is going to then equal 4. And that's the same answer that we got in the previous version of method 1 when we solved the equations. Again, I don't recommend using this method, but it is out there. And if you are good with mental maths and working backwards, you are welcome to use it. Good luck.